Hi, I'm Katie Tovah, a fundamentalist escapee and YouTuber. In honor of Black History Month, I am re-releasing my KKK history series. In the current political climate, real American history matters more than ever before. Please share this video far and wide. Thank you.
Hi, shalom. This video will contain mentions of domestic terrorism, KKK activity, racial violence, and a brief mention of sexual assault. Viewer discretion is advised. I will be holding up a card during some more iffy parts, so you can skip those if you want. Any use of outdated language is for historical purposes only and does not reflect my own views. This is part 2 of my series on the KKK. If you haven't watched part 1, you'll want to watch that first. I'll post the link below. So like I said, KKK activity slowed down for a bit, but would later return with a vengeance. Most of us are familiar with the bullshit idea of Black men being out to assault white women, but what's less commonly known is how that stereotype came about in the first place. So we have to backtrack slightly and talk about the 13th Amendment. So after the war, freed slaves were slowly rebuilding their lives. We all know this was by no means perfect, but again, there is new legislation that didn't exist before. And legislation that exists can be enforced. You had Black men slowly gaining the right to vote. Again, it was by no means an equal dynamic, but Black people were nonetheless starting to gain rights that they hadn't had before. And white Southerners were horrified by this. So they began exploiting the daylights out of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment stated that all of the other amendments don't apply to criminals. So white people began to basically criminalize Blackness. Many Black men were incarcerated, tortured, or killed for allegedly assaulting or even glancing at a woman. White supremacists justified this with the idea that they were protecting pure white virtuous women. And again, this was considered legal because Blacks were considered criminals by law. Most of these poor men had never done a damn thing. This was completely obscene. I also want to mention that this is how the concept of a sundown town originated. Black people were not allowed to be out in public after a fixed time in the evening. And yes, that does sound exactly like what the Nazis did in Europe with Jewish people. Being out in public after curfew was a crime that could result in being incarcerated, tortured, or killed. The cold reality is that if you were a Black person, particularly at this time, every day could be your last. The 1910s was when all of this shit really started to hit the fan, thanks to a film called Birth of a Nation, which came out in 1914. This film depicted the exact stereotype I'm talking about, a Black man assaulting a white woman. I watched some clips for my research and I refuse to watch it in its entirety. It is absolutely disgusting. The Black man is a ridiculously savage character and he almost doesn't even look human. Little sidebar here. I was talking to someone about this and we got onto the subject of why Black actors did roles like that. The answer is that unfortunately, there weren't really any other roles they could get back then. A Black actress from Gone with the Wind got really fed up with this after doing that role and barely did any acting after that. But I digress. Birth of a Nation was disturbingly popular and is now widely considered to be a primary cause of the KKK resurgence. Woodrow Wilson, the same president who signed the 19th Amendment into law, raved about this film. He had it shown at the White House at least once. Yes, the 19th Amendment was a good thing, obviously, but the Woodrow administration also played a huge role in the resurgence of the KKK at that time. Racism had always, unfortunately, existed everywhere, but Birth of a Nation and the Woodrow administration threw a ton of gasoline on that fire. This went from fringe-ish ideology to being completely mainstream. Around this time, the KKK headquarters moved to DC, and they began working more heavily in the political sphere. They had a publication called Fellowship Forum, which was geared toward pure Americanism. Oh my God. Ugh. These people descended from people who were not from here. There can't be such a thing as pure Americanism because everyone has ancestry from all over. And the fact that this even needs to be said makes me so angry. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the part of all of this that's so disturbing to me is that out of context, so much of this crap looks completely benign. You could get KKK merchandise as easily as you could get, say, Disney merchandise for your kids. This was a whole industry. In 1924, the KKK generated $25 million, $300 million in 2011. Ads for this stuff were in newspapers, just like we see coupons and stuff in our newspapers today, if you get a printed newspaper. The KKK ran all kinds of camps and activities, and if you didn't know who was running those things, you'd think it was as innocuous as a regular summer camp, etc. When they weren't wearing robes or burning crosses, KKK members were more or less hiding in plain sight. I'm going to share a quote from Malcolm X, and I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to hold up a card during the quote, which I will be reading as written in my natural voice. Quote from Malcolm X. When my mother was pregnant with me, she told me later that a party of hooded Ku Klux Klan riders galloped up to our home in Omaha, Nebraska one night, surrounding the house, brandishing their shotguns and rifles. They shouted for my father to come out. My mother went to the door and opened it, standing where they could see her pregnant condition. She told them she was alone with her 3 small children while my father was away, preaching in Milwaukee. The Klansmen shouted threats and warnings at her that we had better get out of town because the good Christian white people were not going to stand for my father spreading trouble among the good Negroes of Omaha. In 1923, the KKK started groups for children. Girls had the Tri-K Club, which was more or less the American version of the League of German Girls. That was the Nazi indoctrination program for girls. Boys had the Hitler Jugend, or Hitler Youth. The HJ is a whole other thing I want to dig into at some point. There's something I came across in my research that is kind of disturbing, but I want to share this to emphasize just how normalized all this shit was and how children were being taught to hate. Trigger warning for hateful ideology and KKK activity. This is really on the iffy side, so I'm going to hold up the card until I'm done talking about this part, and you can decide whether or not you want to skip this. This one just about made me fall to the floor. Okay, so I was just talking about how they had all these programs for indoctrinating children. Brace yourself for this one. They actually held cross burning and decorating competitions for kids. These things are so eerie because, like I said, out of context, some of these things look like they are completely innocent and benign. And these activities are so eerily similar to things I've done with kids or my synagogue, like menorah lighting contests during the holidays or making gingerbread houses or whatever. But that's all harmless, innocent stuff. I am so angry because I am at the point where nothing really surprises me anymore. Don't get me wrong, this is all horrifying, but I am well beyond the point of being shocked. So originally, I was going to make this a 3-part series, but realistically, it's probably going to have to be at least 4 parts because this has so many twists and turns I was not expecting. I know I'm throwing tons of information at you all, but I have seen all this from the inside, and in the current political climate, it's going in super iffy directions very quickly. So this is important stuff to talk about. I will be producing and airing the videos in this series as soon as I can. I've got a couple other projects in the works right now, and right now it's kind of all TBD how soon I'll be able to finish everything. As said, I've always got lots of moving parts behind the scenes. But I will get everything aired as soon as I can. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon. Bye.
If you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor and hit the thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Like you Bye.